But why would Darwin choose to attend Edinburgh? The quick answer is that he didn't. His father decided for him, and Edinburgh was chosen because it was a family tradition to go there to study medicine. In fact, anyone pursuing a career in medicine was wise to go to Edinburgh, as since the mid-18th century it had been the best medical school. Hence, there was an ever-increasing notability that Darwin would end up in Edinburgh, given its prominence as a seat of medical learning, and the Darwin family connections, together with his father's growing exasperation with his lackadaisical son. In 1825, his father chastised him thus:
"You care for nothing but shooting dogs and rat-catching, and you will be a disgrace to yourself and your family."
Robert Darwin was a big guy, so Darwin's father also took action to rein in his wayward son by removing him from his school in Shrewsbury, 2 years prematurely, for having achieved only ordinary grades. Darwin's exit was recorded in his journal with undertones of understandable apprehension and self-pity.
1825, June 17th. Left Shrewsbury School forever. 16 years old.
When he did leave home, he had to pay £7 for his own travel northwards to that new and alien environment.
October. Went with Erasmus to Edinburgh.
But perhaps the prospect was not that daunting. Darwin was used to living away from home as a boarder in Shrewsbury. Additionally, he was accompanying his beloved brother with whom he shared interests in chemistry and the outdoors. Young, yes, but from his schooling and adolescent letters, one can see that he was also self-aware and rebellious. Useful buffers in the fire. The University of Edinburgh seems to have been a bountiful source of influences on the young 16-year-old, and he lapped up its strangeness and charm.
Edinburgh, Sunday morning. My dear father, as I suppose Erasmus has given all the particulars of our journey, I will say no more about it, except that altogether it had cost me £7. We got into our lodgings yesterday evening, which are very comfortable and near the college. Our landlady, by name Mrs. Mackay, is a nice clean old body and exceedingly civil and attentive. She lives in 11 Lothian Street, Edinburgh, and only 4 flights of steps from the ground floor, which is very moderate to some of the other lodgings we were nearly taking. The terms are £1 6 for 2 very nice and light bedrooms and a nice sitting room. By the way, light bedrooms are very scarce articles in Edinburgh, since most of them are little holes in which there is neither air or light. We called on Dr. Hawley the first morning, whom I think we never should have found had it not been for a good-natured Doctor of Divinity, who took us into the library and showed us a map, and gave us how to find him. Indeed, all the Scotchmen are so civil and attentive that it is enough to make an Englishman ashamed of himself. I should think Dr. Butler, or any other fat English divine, would take 2 utter strangers into his library and show them the way. When at last we found the doctor, and having made all the proper speeches on both sides, we all 3 set out and walked all about the town, which we admire excessively. Indeed, Bridge Street is the most extraordinary thing I ever saw. When we first looked over the sides, we could hardly believe our eyes when, instead of a fine river, we saw a stream of people. We spend all our mornings in promenading about the town, which we know pretty well, and in the evenings we go to the play to hear Miss Stevens, which is quite delightful. She is very popular here, being encored to such a degree that she can hardly get on with the play. On Monday we are going to I don't know how to spell the rest of the word. Before we got into our lodgings, we were staying at the Star Hotel in Princess Street, where to my surprise I met with an old schoolfellow whom I very much like. He's just come back from a walking tour in Switzerland and is now going to study for his degree. The introductory lectures begin next Wednesday, and we were matriculated for them on Saturday. We pay 10 shillings and write our names in a book, and the ceremony is finished, but the library is not free for us until we get a ticket from a professor. We've just been to church and heard a sermon of only 20 minutes. I expected from Walter Scott's account a soul-cutting discourse of 2 hours and a half. I remain, your affectionate son, C. Darwin.
This stuff writes itself. Consequently, concerns about his immaturity would have been quickly put to rest. His newfound freedom cultivated pomposity, common among new undergraduates. His brashness was communicated to his sister Caroline as indignation, if slighted.
I am very much surprised that Papa should so forget himself as to call me a collegian of the University of Edinburgh, a boy.
Solvent undergraduates from affluent backgrounds usually had funds for recreation. In Edinburgh, this has historically involved the opportunity to experiment with recreational drugs, something in which the Darwins partook.
The gaieties of Edinburgh are now just beginning. Do you remember Lady Harriet talking about inhaling nitric oxide? Johnson has actually done it, and describes the effects as the most intense pleasure he ever felt. We both mean to get tipsy in the vacation.
General Boredom probably figured in Darwin's intention to go home early before the autumn semester. His journey was to include return via Glasgow.
I mean to go as far as Glasgow by the canals, and from thence on terra firma to Shrewsbury, but sending my books by sea.
Now, this is a real show of independence, likely inspired by Erasmus's account of his trip there by canal in early March, involving bottled beer and toddy. This suggestion was not well received. His father sent protestations, firstly, indirectly, via Darwin's sister, Susan.
My dear Charlie, I was very well pleased to receive your last letter, as I hope you are getting in better humour with Edinburgh now that spring has come. Do go some day to see Rosslyn Castle, which I believe is within a few miles from Edinburgh, and it is very well worth seeing. At present, they have made a diorama of it in London. My reason for writing so soon is that I have a message from Papa to give you, which I'm afraid you won't like. He desires me to say that he thinks your plan of picking and choosing what lectures you like to attend not at all a good one, and as you cannot have enough information to know what may be of use to you, it is quite necessary for you to bear with a good deal of stupid and dry work. But if you do not discontinue your present indulgent way, your course of study will be utterly useless. Papa was sorry to hear that you thought of coming home before the course of lectures were finished, but hopes you will not do so. I am so sleepy, I must wish you good night. Your ever affectionate, Susan.
Now, when Darwin proved unrelenting of his plans, Susan's tip-off was followed up a few weeks later by a joint letter from his other sisters, Emily and Caroline, conveying relief at his acceptance of their father's will, which had delayed his departure, and had probably wanted to thwart it entirely.
Thank you, dear Charles, for your very kind, affectionate letter. You cannot tell how much I value your love. I am very glad we shall have you at home again soon, and Papa is very glad that you have remained to attend all the lectures, as he is sure they will be useful to you. He wants to know if you are thinking of any excursion in your way home to see any new country that you did not pass through as you went to Edinburgh. Papa is rather surprised that you're going to Glasgow, as there's nothing worth seeing in your way there. And he should have thought it a better plan to leave as much of your heavy luggage as you can in Edinburgh, as you will return there, and so not have the plague of the carriage of it backwards and forwards.
We've also got input from Noam Chomsky, Richard Dawkins, Dembski you've heard, Dennett you've heard, Richard L. Gregory, famous neuropsychologist, we'd call him, perhaps. Ken Ham himself, Adrian Hawkes, you remember from the Root of All Evil programme at the Creationist School, Richard Holloway, the ex-bishop of Edinburgh, Randal Keynes, great-great-great-grandson of Darwin, Aubrey Manning, BBC presenter, Sir Martin Rees, Astronomer Royal, and last but not least, Dr. Martin Murray in the audience, who adds a fantastic observation about Darwin's own observational powers. I will take some questions.
We don't have time.
In the bar. Well, actually, I can be selling books and signing them at the same time. Please buy the book. Baby needs new shoes.
Okay, guys, can we have a round of applause for JFDerry?